Welcome to the show, everybody. Michael Freeley is a multiple paranormal UFO experiencer and has even witnessed unorthodox craft coming from portals. He is a 17-year veteran of the police force in the UK who is now an author of 7 books as well as several ebooks. He's an ancient code breaker, spiritual life coach, public international conference speaker, and we get the pleasure of having him on the show tonight to talk about his book, Alchemy of the Gods. Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right, Austin, welcome to the show. Chris is currently taking care of some stuff on the home side. He hopefully will be able to join us here in a little bit. But at this time, let's welcome Michael Freeley to the show. How are you, sir?
Lovely. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're welcome. Live from the UK. I mean, I still, thank you so much for doing it. I mean, midnight. I mean, that's a night owl. Yeah, it's.
Oh, yes.
But like I teased, just 17-year police officer. I mean, we're going to be talking about his book, and I'm going to go over a little bit of his bio here right now for everybody. You can go to michael-freeley.com to get more information on him. I'm going to share this right now for everybody so you guys can see this. That's watching tonight can see this, and listening, just go to the show and you can, to that website, and you can see it as we're talking here. So Michael Freeley, author, like I said, author, researcher, revealer of hidden esoteric knowledge. He's got a list. I mean, this website is really cool. I like the way just as you scroll, things change as you go. It's really cool as everybody's. You got a link right here for the services, spiritual life coaching sessions, one-on-ones, subscriptions, webinars, workshops. It's all right there. You just can view the services. You can book this one right there. So if you want to talk to him for a life coach, click right there. You're going to be able to get in. UFO Cons, he's a speaker there. Here's a list of the events. Like I said, you go through. Here's a list of the books. The one we're going to be talking about right now is Alchemy of the Gods. And this is the one I teased you before the show. This book has got to be one of the most elaborate introduction acknowledgement books I've ever read. There is so much information just in the introduction part of this book. It's the equivalent of when you normally read a book, it's like 2 or 3 chapters of information. And it's just, as you're reading it, I've got it on the Kindle version. I'm just page after page, and I'm like, and we're still in the introduction. We have not even got to the first chapter, and it's just, you keep going. So, man, amazing job on the work you did on that book.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So I just kind of to start with, when you get, and I'm going to get this off the screen here so we can bring it in there. Now you're bigger. Now everybody can see you better. So as you go through, you even broke down like how it started out for you in the early days. I mean, if I remember right from the book, you were 5, was it 5 or 6, or was I thinking like around that time? when you started questioning the things around you, like this doesn't make sense?
That's correct. He was about probably 6, 7, 8, and I used to watch really kind of iconic movies, really like the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, and I used to sit there as a young child and have adult questions. How could this happen? Could it really happen? If so, how? How can a man part an ocean? And I always used to feel like I've been dropped off at the wrong planet, and somebody would be shooting back to pick me up. But now I always felt different. The Earth system never made sense, and now I understand why it doesn't make sense. But at the time, as I say, of 6, 7, and 8, you don't necessarily have the answers to your questions, and that's what really happened to me. And through certainly early life, with that kind of attitude and that kind of things not just not adding up, and of course I'll reckon thinking and it doesn't make sense. So yes, it was a very, very young age for me when it began, when the open-mindedness began.
Yeah, and as you're reading it, like you're going through this, one of the things I really liked is how you even went really personal, how you talked through your schooling age, how the struggles that you had, through the testing, through stuff. And it's a testament to people that just because you're not the best in school, you're not the smartest in school, you still have so much potential and so much to offer. Because just later on, like you said, you go through here, you became an accomplished police officer. And the thing, and through the stuff that you're doing now, so it shows this doesn't define you. How you have in these early ones. It's about what's finding the potential inside yourself. So it was an amazing story.
It is. I think what is important is how you, because the schooling system is really defines you from the outside, and it sometimes doesn't cater for the individual. The schooling system is just a carte blanche system, really. And as Einstein says, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you're going to see it as pretty dumb. But it's how you define yourself, which is you're not really concerning yourself too much about with other people are trying to define you or trying to fit you into certain boxes to comply with their system. But yes, I mean, when I was at school, again, it was just one of those systems that seemed very, very alien to me. It seemed very backwards. It seemed like testing children at such a young age was what's all this about? Children learn by playing. Children learn in their own time, and I felt somewhat trying to force me into a certain box, into a certain position. So I went through school thinking that I was not intelligent, not encouraged to be, not complimented in any way, really, and I always felt isolated. I always felt reluctant to ask for help. And this when I look back at a lot of my school reports, from again the age of my 11 and before and after, it all says the same thing. He'd never ask for help. When he struggles, he just gets on with it. He just does things himself. He's quiet, he's secluded, and that's because I didn't want to. Not because I was antisocial. I just didn't want to do that. So no, it doesn't. What you become is not necessarily where you start from, or the journey or the middle of the journey, not necessarily the one that you start. So it's what you yourself, and not really concern yourself with the expectations of people outside of you.
Yeah, I mean, you, and like I said, as you go through there, as I said, it's continuing through I think this, like the part I'm referencing to, and I think this is just the foreword that was written on the book that was kind of broke into this, where it talks about, you even bring up the point to where who has a 17-year career and then just decides, I'm going to do something completely different. people look at you, you're throwing away you're throwing away a bigger pension, you're throwing away all these stuff, and you just go from here to you just do that, do the crazy Ivan to a whole nother field. And so how was that honestly received by the family? I mean, did everybody try to talk you out of it, or was it something that you found that you had a lot of support behind this change?
Well, again, got in Monty Python, and for something completely different. How did it go? Well, I didn't expect to ever leave this occupation. When you enter this country, it's a difficult job to get into, because certainly at the time, the standards were high, that they expectations of their recruits, etc. And it was quite a difficult process to get through to be accepted. So once you're in, it is normally accepted that you are there for duration. It's extended slightly now, but when I joined, it was a 30-year career. So you don't expect to walk out midway or a quarter of the way through. At the time this was going on for, but there's also a lot of strange things happening at the same time, which was kind of contributing largely to the decision. Now, the time that I was making this decision, the time that I was withdrawing from this occupation, was at the time a real global recession where people were losing their jobs. Now, the police is a secure occupation, which is something really, really severely breaks rules or wherever, then you are there for the duration. It's a secure occupation. So at a time where people are actually losing their jobs and losing their careers and losing their houses because of a global recession, I decided to walk out of a secure occupation. So that, of course, raised a few eyebrows. That caused quite a few questions.
I'm sure.
I was like the questioning of sanity and different things. But again, it goes back to define yourself, because too often we are influenced by people outside of ourselves, and yes, you listen to them, you listen to their guidance, but nevertheless the decision is yours. You make the decision often from a position that other people don't have. You don't always have the same as you have, because you're the one who's concerned in all this. So yes, of course, there were the questions of sanity. There were, do you really know what you're doing? It's concerning. But when I've made a decision, when I've made my mind, then it's quite a, should we say, a fixed decision. I'm quite stubborn-minded in this when I've made a decision to do something, and I've never been overly influenced by the opinions. I've never been overly influenced by the suggestions of what I should do, because it's my choice. And had these strange, shall we say, paranormal, supernatural things not been part of the equation, then maybe the decision would have been different. But not many people have the kind of things that I had to contend with in order to separate from that career. Had they have had the same things to contend with as I did, then I'm sure that their decision would have been the same or very similar to the one that I made.
Yeah, and that's and then one of the things too that I wanted to kind of get, while we're talking about the police force career, is you had chapter 2 in the book is where you talked about UFO encounters. And for anybody, go to his website, michael-feely.com, go there, or Amazon, pick up this book. This is kind of a one-stop shop. I mean, there's so much information, so many different things in this book. I mean, everything from Anunnaki, Stonehenge. I mean, it just goes through. We talk and we'll get into some of those topics, but this one, you actually had paranormal encounters while you were serving as an officer. And one of those that we had, that really was it was one of the first encounter you talked about, was the night they came to visit. As you titled it, the night they came to visit the landing site. And so if you want to explain that, describe that a little bit to people, because that one was, and I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit more than what was written there and see what's there. But yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, of course. I was on a night shift, which was 10 p.m. till 7 a.m. the next morning. and I met my wife in the police. She was in the police as too, and on this particular evening, we were in the same patrol car, so together on this particular evening. From the very onset, they felt something different about this evening, but it wasn't a physical difference. You couldn't, but they just felt a difference. And the first incident of the evening was an intruder alarm, a burglar alarm, at a big leisure centre. And when an alarm, it's either a false alarm, something has set it off, or it's a genuine burglary and people are breaking into. So it's an emergency call, and that was our first call of the evening. So we got out there. We met a dog handler with illegal canines at the location, and it turned out to be a false alarm. But as we were standing outside the premises with the canine, I suddenly looked up at the sky, and so did the other two officers there, one of them being my wife, and we saw what we could describe as two shooting stars side by side in the sky, and they're literally just warp speed. Now, if for anyone who's seen a shooting star, it's not unusual, but how many people have seen two at the exact same parallel shooting across the sky together? You don't do that. It's almost like a military jet distance between each other. So that this was the first incident. So going on throughout the night shift, we concentrated because there were lots and lots of calls about intruders in people's back gardens, and in this particular area, all the lights went out in the street over a probably 2 mile area at the same time. So we were getting there, different people calling up at the same time in different properties, not too far away from each other, saying there's people in my back garden. So we were racing to the scene, no one there. We'd leave the back garden, they call and say they're here again. I can see shadows, I can see silhouettes in the back garden. We'd race to the scene again, and there was no one there. And this continued to happen, and all the lights went out. And then we were standing by, again, what a manhole cover, which is one of them metal square or circular pieces in the floor where you have the sewers and different parts. And there was a gigantic explosion, and one of these shot up in the air and flew across the air. And it was just one of them very, very eerie feelings that we're not in control here. We don't know what's going on, but it's not something that is conventional. You don't get lots and lots of calls in the same area, all the lighting's going out, you're having explosions in underground substations, electricity substations, which again was confirmed by the electricity company as most unusual because there are 9 explosions underground at that time. And they say, occasionally we'll get 1 per evening, but they had 9, and very, very strange with lots and lots of people seeing things that got in, the feeling that went with that, the explosions, the things that we were seeing in the sky. And it was just one of them really, really crazy evenings where you just knew that you weren't in control. Now, as police officers, you feel in control of the streets. You feel you are the ones that keep society together, really, and you are in control. So to feel completely helpless, but not to know why, there's no reason that you can see. There's no 250 rioters coming over the hill towards you. There's just something that you cannot see. We then finished at 7 a.m. the next morning. I went home, and I was typing an email to a local UFO group who I'd become friends with. I was serving, and as I was typing out the information that was going on, and they were typing back to me, my emails just disappeared off the computer, and then I physically watched them put back as if someone had taken them. And what followed from this was recordings of my phone conversations off on the landline by cell phone, by me calling out a telephone engineer to look at the network box outside my house, who found some kind of anomaly. And I was having, when I was in conversation with friends or family, and certain words,
Yeah.
And so basically from that point on, I was monitored, and it turns out, I believe it was GCHQ this who'd seen lots of things as well whilst serving. And I guess it was of interest to them to know what was being seen. But it was a strange night, and my opinion is, for those who've seen the movie E.T. and you have the landing and you have more lights at the beginning, scurrying around a particular area doing something. That's what happened.
Yeah. Did anybody get a description of it? I know it says a lot of like shadows and silhouettes, but did anybody actually physically see it and give you guys, like, it had, like the little grays, like your normal description, how you have a lot of people? Did anybody give those kind of descriptions, or was it usually just a general, there's somebody out there, I can't see him, but I know there's something moving in my yard?
The only descriptions I could give, because at least in the early one, was shadow, a silhouette. Now, the same on every call with the same description. As I say, when at the same time we are then getting the lights completely pitch black, lightings going out in the street for a region of a mile, and all these things are happening at the same time. Underground light going out, people calling from within a mile or so. A shadow in my back garden. I can see through my window now. I can see this. It's unusual, but really unusual to get calls at the same time in the same area with the lights going out to have a really, really eerie feeling. So for me, that was some kind of landing went on that particular evening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for me, like I said, just when you have all those corroborating stories, when everybody's describing the same thing, it leads so much validity to these things when you have multiple people that don't know each other, that are all giving the same accounts, giving the same things. You have to, at that point, you have to start taking this stuff seriously, because you can't just, it's a little old lady, hitting the bottle a little too heavy, again, and it's some cat that's getting into garbage, she thinks it's an alien. No, you have everybody from business professionals to just everybody going, no, I saw this thing. It was, I can't give you this. It was short shadow, you were crawling through. Yeah, that's one of those things. It's, man, at that time, you wished that you had the camera system like they do now, now all over the place, because what would have possibly been caught. But like you said, apparently the powers that be went through and tried to make sure that this was as scrubbed as good as possible, to make sure there's no record of it.
And they do, and again, there's been incidents where I've seen things in the same area. Again, I was with paramedics and other officers at an incident in the same area at different times. And because it's probably only about 2 or 3 miles from an international airport where I was, and as I stand on the doorstep speaking to the paramedics and the other officers, I looked up and saw a ball of fire in the sky. Now, my initial thought was, it's an aeroplane in distress, because it was international airport and it was a ball of fire in the sky, and as it came over, it was completely solid, which in the book, which bore no resemblance to what I saw with my eyes, twice and then just disappeared. Now, ironically, a couple of weeks later, in the same area, my police force helicopter was at an incident, and at the conclusion of the incident, he started flying back to this international airport, which was his base, and he was followed by a ball of fire, which was got cameras. The airport refused it permission to land until this object had gone. It was like the last thing that I'd seen, this ball of fire, and of course it was restricted. The Ministry of Defence were involved, the aviation authorities were involved, so nobody to what the conclusion of that investigation was. But in the same area of sky, I'd seen a ball of fire twice on the same evening. A few weeks later, the police helicopter was followed by a ball of fire, and it was refused access to the airport until it had gone. So there are strings happening we're not being told about, and these are just a few of the incidents and a few of the things that I've seen, and there's stuff going that we're not being told.
Okay. Yeah. No. Austin he dropped off real quick. We're checking to see something like here because we got a little bit of a lag, so we're trying to figure out if it was his end or what. No, it's those stories. I mean, I absolutely loved them. I mean, the other one that I really hung on to too was Encounter 7, and it was a scene from what you titled "The Scene from Close Encounters," like the movie where you guys were out at the Clint Hills. And that one, I really liked the way that you could just, like you said, you saw the objects, up in the sky. And so if you want to explain that one, because especially like we said, the monoliths, and you saw that I think it was clockwise motion that the object was moving.
Yeah. What happened for anyone who's seen the movie Klaus and Kind, you'll know that the main story is past for some strange reason. I'll get in this film to go to a certain place at a certain time, and he turns out to be, and they're carving the mountain in mashed potatoes and building it because it's driving them mad because they don't know what's going on. The model of the story is they're receiving invites to go to a certain place at a certain time for a certain event. Now that happened to me, two friends. One evening, we all individually had an urge to go to a place called the Clint Hills. The Hills is an ancient site. Obviously, it's a hill, and it's about 250 feet in the air, but you can actually see 4 English counties from this vantage. There are 4 crystalline monoliths, and there were 4 of us. Now we all individually had the urge that we needed to go. So we said, do you want to go to the Clint Hills tomorrow night for a walk? And eventually, yeah, we actually got a strong urge. We want to go there. So the next day, so once we'd made plans to go, and we were going to pick them up from their house and take them there, I kept getting images of being standing in the stand monoliths and seeing orbs and different things from all directions coming towards me into the center of these monoliths. It's a sort of mental image that I kept getting throughout that evening, having made this to go there. So the next evening we went to planned. It would probably be about 7 o'clock in the evening. It was winterish time, so it was quite dark early. And we went to these 4 monoliths. We scaled the hill to get there, etc. And as we got there, every individual, including me, had the urge to go and stand by one monolith. So you had 4 people, 4 stone monoliths, and we were all standing at one monolith each. At the same time, again, we all had the urge that we needed to move, almost like a baseball home run, and we had to individually go to the next stone along, and then the next one, and the next one, until we actually return back to the original monolith that we'd stood by. So if you imagine the baseball home run and you're running in a circle, that's what we had to do. Now, when I could actually see there was something above the stone monoliths, I could actually see in my mind's eye there was some kind of craft above us. And we took lots and lots of pictures of the landscape, as you would expect. And lo and behold, the orbs coming from all different directions into the center of these monoliths, which is the exact central images that I've been having the previous evening. So the camera had confirmed what I'd seen mentally the previous evening. So we all had the urge to go to this place. What the camera picked up the next evening, And these orbs, these circles of light are coming from all different directions into the center of the monolith, and they were going into this craft that was above us. And literally, that was the end of that. We'd all walked closer, we'd opened up something and done something unknowingly. But a couple of years later, one of our friends who were there speaking to a resident who is also this kind of subject, and she said, and again, just completely without any prompting, without any discussion, this over there who said, "You do know there's a craft above them monoliths, don't you?"
Wow.
And that again, synchronicity, everything synchronicity just seems to come together.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
So that was that one particular incident of many.
Man, and yeah, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time on just talk about UFO stories, because there's so much more to this book. So let's just get to right here. Since I got to the juicy part that right off the part that I was really the UFOs here. But what was your main goal? Your main point that you were trying to get across to everybody through the writing of this book? I'll give you kind of like my take. I took a little bit from it that it was not only was it your self story, but it was also trying to educate myself. Like I learned a lot about some of the questions I've had, especially with religion, that you're spending too much time looking outside of ourselves, where we need to be doing a lot more focus this way. That here is where the key is, not out here.
That pretty much is it. It's looking at things through because humanity has been doing the same things for thousands of years, and they're basically arguing within circles. And in order for us to advance as a race and advance as people, mysteries, but the only way we can answer the mystery is by finding the answers within the mystery itself. If we want the answers of the universe, if we want to know the answers of nature and the seas, then we need to understand firstly ourselves, of all of those things. So unless we understand ourselves, how can we possibly understand anything else? And that really is the ethos of the book, to look at things through fresh eyes, to look at things differently, because the gods that we've been worshipping for thousands of years are magic gods. They are magical formulas. Even the word God itself hides the 4 elements, but it's the 4 elements within us that we have to master. Now, when you master those 4 elements, that is the Godhead, what the Egyptians called the Godhead. So it's the union with God within. Now, when you look at the word self, the middle 2 letters are El, which originally meant God. So it is the God within, it is the God force within you that we must bring out, and we must initiate, and we must awaken. And that really is the general theme of the book, that you will never find, you will never find the salvation rescue from outside of yourself. You have to understand yourself. You have to look for the answers, because you are your own savior. And when I looked at all of these different religions, when I looked at all of the ancient civilizations, originally I went with a view that they are all individuals, that they, the Sumerians were different to the Babylonians, who were different to the Egyptians, who were different to the Kabbalah and the Jewish mystics. But what I soon found is that they were all connected. They were all connected through their encoded messages, and they were all connected through mathematics. How each of these monuments is mathematically giving you like elements of significance, and that goes from Mars to Earth, from Earth to Earth, from Earth to Mars, and all of these different places. They're giving clues. Their locations in longitude and latitude coordinates through mathematics. When you look at every single theme of the ancients, you could read 1,000 books on each civilization, but what they were telling you in code forms, through hieroglyphs, through special writings, through monoliths and monuments, they were giving us the keys to self. They were giving us the keys to enlightenment. They were giving us the keys to connect with the God itself. And it may be a different monolith, it may be a different shape, but they are merely different instruments within the same orchestra. And that is what I found, that it was all about enlightenment, it's all about consciousness, it's all about inner potential, whether that's Inaki, whether that's the Egyptians, whether that's the Greeks, whoever it was, that's what they were telling you. And what I also found is that the Bible really is a code book, and if you wish to read it at its superficial levels, then beautiful stories, that Noah built and that is part of the red. But when you look into the real esoteric mysteries, that all of the characters were metaphorical. They were metaphorical to indicate about the potential within. Moses parting the sea and going back to my childhood questioning that. Then in later life answer, it is a metaphor, because when you look at the Gnostic versions of these stories, the parting of the Red Sea, the open of least resistance from the root chakra, which is the captivity, to the promised land, which is the land promised, which is enlightenment. Now, they go from the root that distance, which they call the open sea, and that is what the Red Sea Moses was really talking about. The burning bush was the fire within, the enlightenment of the sun. And that goes into Christ, that goes into Mary Magdalene, that goes into Noah. The true Noah's Ark is the Great Pyramid. So this is the arcane jewel of knowledge that has been stored in time, that has come through the waters of time by the stars to reach us now, when this sacred knowledge was to be re-emerged. So the original Bible is the Giza Plateau in Egypt, and the identity of the Christ, because that represents the enlightened mind, it represents the initiated soul. And what I've done is taken the story of Christ, which is really the story of initiations, and taken the process of birth, when 9 pyramids of Giza, which represent the 9 months of pregnancy. The 9 months. Now those 9 months of pregnancy happen in 3 tried methods. 9 pyramids in groups of 3. They're the middle 3, which are aligned to Orion, the Silver Gate, where souls enter this reality. When you look, that is when medical science tells you that consciousness comes into the mind of the child, to where you have the 3 big pyramids, because they represent the third final trimester of pregnancy. So you're coming through the Silver Gate, which is above Orion. Ironically, you have the light of the Vatican City, which is aligned to this as well, and Jerusalem is aligned to this. You go the gate through Orion, you symbolically come through the 9 months of pregnancy, then you come out of the Sphinx, which represents the mother, which represents the child coming into this reality from the celestial to the terrestrial. That is the Holy Grail, that is the vessel of God. So everybody that comes into this physical reality has to come through the vessel of God, which is the Holy Grail, the womb, and that is represented by the Sphinx of Egypt, which is the fierce protector of her cub. Now, what is a young lion cub? It is Judah, tribe of Judah. So we have the story of Christ, which is it is the cornerstone the builders rejected. That is the Great Pyramid. So all of these different stories of the Bible and throughout religions can be brought back to the origin of the oracle in stone with the matter.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this in a couple shows before. It's when, like, we talked about the stories, whether or not you believe, literally, like the story of Moses taking the Israelites from Egypt to the Promised Land. If you do a Google search real quick and you just type in distance between Cairo to Jerusalem, literally walking, it's 148 hours. So Moses has got to be one of the worst navigators in all of history to spend that, how many, what was it, 40 years wandering the desert. You literally, I mean, I joke around, it's like, at what point does somebody in the line go, Moses, seriously, this is the same rock. This is the same, we've seen this rock formation before. I mean, you have to have crossed something before. And I mean, you'd think somebody would have been like, dude, seriously, I don't think this guy knows where he's going.
I'm turning.
You know, what do we do? At some point you had to, just mathematically, you would have had to have stumbled in the right direction. If you kept traveling, because of the distance, there's just no way. I mean, 6 days. I'm like, that means you could go how many? People want to do the quick math. That's, by my math, that's 60 different trips you could take in a year. So at some point you would have to stumble apart in the right direction. So yeah, so that's a little side note on that one.
No, and again, when you make this analysis, and when you look at some Israeli archaeologists that have come out and said, in 70 years of excavation, we have not found one single physical evidence that it's a metaphor. And when you understand what the metaphor is telling you, then you realise that there was no physical Exodus, there was no physical Moses, there was no physical Christ. It is symbolic. It represents something else, but it's teaching you, and it's teaching the people that wish to where they've written 7 layers of and if you get to the deepest levels, then your stories are actually telling you, and we have physical stories. It is greater than physical people. It is greater than some people walking in the Middle East. It is greater than that because it's telling you about your potential in life, your potential Godhead, your potential union with the God within. That is what it is talking about. And it is the same with Noah. Noah is really talking about the 7 chakras, the complete.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Bible, the diameters that the Bible give you for the Ark of the Covenant is the exact diameters of the sarcophagus within the Great Pyramid. So the Ark of the Covenant, the sarcophagus of Egypt, and all of these different Bible stories relate to the Giza Plateau. Now, when you start then looking into the Kabbalah and the numbers and the magic formulas, and you start looking at God names and who they are and what they are, of course, have mastery of the elements, and it goes very deep into numbers, into numerology, into letters, into words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and there's different meanings to what we are believing them to mean. And the Hebrews knowledge, and a lot of the Jewish mystics have hidden that in the a lot of it was edited by the Roman Church, as was the Bible, as was various other religious books. But there's part of the scrolls, the Knights Templars found on the Crusades, and they took them and hid them. And the part of the Dead Sea Scrolls that they think would bring down the church, because there's no mention of Christ, there's no mention of resurrection, and that is the foundation of the church. Without that event, there is no church. So the Knights Templars, they've hidden them in Rosslyn Chapel. Now I've located where they've hidden them.
Oh wow!
So what I did is I did a map overlay of Scotland. I put the Star of David over Scotland, and where you see Rosslyn marked on the map of Scotland, you take that Star of David map and you put it on the floor plan of Rosslyn Chapel, and it tells you exactly where they've hidden the Dead Sea Scrolls would bring down the church.
That's cool.
And the Christ is not mentioned in the Qumran Cave Scrolls. Christ is not mentioned. There are Jewish mystics that are writing this because the character Christ didn't exist. That is why it's not mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But of course, if people knew that, then there would be no church.
Correct
the story of Christ.
No, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't recall any record like Roman records, and they were meticulous record keepers in a lot of aspects. I don't remember them. I don't remember any ledgers, anything depicting massive crowds. Followers. They would have noted that some guy calling himself, Jesus of Nazareth, had thousands of followers going around him, this would have been noted in some official record, because obviously they're looking for uprisings. So they're not gonna allow this huge group to just go unaware. I don't recall any. And like so said, if you've come across it, if anybody knows of these, please tell me, because I don't know if I've ever seen a Roman record that depicts the story that's laid out in the Bible.
I've never heard of one.
No, there's actually no evidence that this character Christ ever existed. There's obviously later masquerade. I mean by that is when you look at Egyptian star charts, which were taken by the Jewish mystics, which were hidden in the Dead Sea Scrolls, not only of a calendar which was taken from Egyptian knowledge, but it also gives you the true, which is the 11th of September 9/11, not the 5th of December. Now, look, the 5th of December comes into it. Well, it's astronomy, but it's also the Roman cult of Sol Invictus. So what the Romans were tricking Christians into believing that the 25th of December was the birth of their icon, Christ, when in reality they were actually worshipping the Roman cult of Sol Invictus, who was born on the 25th of December. So the Christ story was used multiple times before the actual Christ date. So the reason that these things are not mentioned is because there was no such character. It is a metaphor.
That is cool. That's cool. That was, and that was one of the ones like I really wanted to get with you too. Just it's because this happened to me in seminary school. I know the same thing. There was just certain things that just didn't make sense. It's like one of those, you're so much more advanced, on seeing the connections than I was. I don't even come close to the connections that you have, that you have put together. I mean, this book, everybody, I mean, seriously, Alchemy of the Gods, go pick it up just so you can read it. He's got it all laid out there. And I mean, I would look at stuff like I said, where I just said with like the Moses thing. I didn't have the Google data to, make it that quick, but I was just like, how can you wander around for that long in such a small space and never come across something? One of the things that they didn't like is like the Noah story. Okay, the entire world is flooded. Where did that water go? I mean, that water had to go somewhere. It has to be somewhere. I mean, it doesn't just evaporate and disappear. I mean, it's for anybody that does science, matter retains itself. It doesn't just vanish. It doesn't just appear. It comes, and so everything would be, so you go through these things and it's just, I would ask these questions and then reading your book, a couple of the other people we've had on the show, plus reading your book, I've really enjoyed it because it's actually given, step by step, words and images and actual explanations for some of the things that I've questioned, that I've wondered, because there's just always that annoying like thread that you want to pull. It's like, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand this, and you're talking like esoteric knowledge, and I've always brought this up, and I don't know if you've encountered this, where you have the people that claim, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, but yet they hold all this faith in this man, this deity that practices the very things that they say are, heretical, that you can't do these things. I mean, Jesus practiced, necromancy. He brought somebody back from the dead. That's literal necromancy. And he did this, and they're telling, no, that's of the devil. I'm pretty sure the guy that's on the cross right there behind you is the one that brought Lazarus from the dead. I'm like, I don't know what to do here.
The name Lazarus relates to Soros, and when you look at blood, well, again, the Great Pyramid is Noah's Ark. Look at the mental phase of it, which involves water. It was conducted within the temple of Mahat, known as the Medet, which means the Great Flood. So again, we have a metaphorical that there are civilizations, documented civilizations, who were existing at the time of the flood, and nothing is what we are being told. When people go to Holy Communion, what they're actually symbolically doing is drinking menstrual blood through the chalice, which is the womb, because that is the drink of the mystics containing lunar energy, and that goes into against the feminine, it goes into the goddess, which is the Mary Magdalene. And the is when you get the basic Pisces of geometry, it is the Pisces, that is the Mary Magdalene, and the reason she's depicted as wearing red because she's menstrual blood. So when you go into the likes of Holy Communion, you are symbolically drinking the red yin juice, which is the red one of the chalice, which is menstrual blood. And you know, people are not understanding what they're really doing, and it comes into the goddess. It comes into, you know, when people are doing these rituals, they have no knowledge as to where they come from, and with answers as a race to people, it may be a good idea to try and find out, because this is, you go back into necromancy, you go back into magic, then yes, because the name of gods, the tetragrammaton of these gods, the Yahweh, the Jehovah, the Ra, all these Enki, these Enlils are talking about the four elements, and it is the four elements within us that is the universal creation. Now you have the water, the air, the earth. Well, everything is created on the basis of those four elements, and that is why the pentagram, the Star of Bethlehem, every year, the pentagram is the symbol of the mysteries because it is microcosmic. And within the five are the four elements plus the ether. So when you ask four elements within by the control of emotions, you come back. Number 10, the complete creation, but the number 5 is miniature microcosmic man. So when you control the four elements within the pentagram, you become the complete man on earth. And that is why the pentagram is so important, and it's hidden in so many different places. You know, when you've got the most famous religious hymn, the chorus of Hallelujah conceals the pentagram. It has 5 notes, 5 different frequencies, which when overlaid give you a pentagram. When you look at company names, you know, you'll all see company names where the letter E is different to the other letters. Why? Because E is the 5th letter, which relates to the 5, which relates to the pentagram. It is the symbol, and it is all completely concealed in every level. But only the people with the eyes that can see are the ones that get the full extent of the true meanings. And the reason that it is the likes of hieroglyphs, which are symbolic, the likes of the Bible are symbolic on many different levels, because the master can control the depth and the pace that the student and the candidate can intake this information. Because if they're not ready for it, they will not get the value of what is meant. So it is a symbolic language that they extend that the candidate and the initiate will learn the sacred truths. But because it's written in metaphors and it's written in code and it's written in symbols, the true language of the world, only the people who are taught to interpret it correctly will get the true story. The rest of everybody else will just get an exoteric, always look outside yourself, always follows the carrot of a promise. Because when you look outside of yourself, you are missing the point, which is yourself. Know thyself, which was the ancient philosophy.
Yeah, and you want to talk about synchronicity. I mean, what we talked about in the beginning with your experience on the police force, with, you know, all those entities wandering and causing this chaos. You know, we talked about, you know, when you keep having more and more of the same identical thing, how this becomes more, this doesn't become outliers. This becomes more of, there's something to this. And when you're going to have somebody that takes the Bible literally, that's going to say, well, you're just pulling stuff that's, you know, this is just random stuff. You know, of course you're going to specifically find, but like you laid out, when you keep having different areas, you know, because there's a lot of people that believe in the Bible code, you know, and one of the things that you're bringing up, like you said, with Hallelujah, with these things, when you keep showing these things, I don't know if everybody realizes, I think I'm shortchanging it. Almost 90% of Christian tradition is borrowed from paganism. It's from the they've taken it from cultures that they have, where, and people don't like it, conquered, have taken over and have forced, into conversion. And the only way you're going to get this, this heathen tribe that doesn't want to convert to you is to take their winter solstice celebration, and now you call it Christmas. It is now, the Easter, you start, and that's how you get these pagan things into your group. And it's like you said, how you go with these things, you start realizing that what everybody says is devil worship, when it's really not. The pentacle, it's one of these, it clearly shows, and you start to see these things. And that's where, once again, like, I keep telling everybody, you have to check out, like, so when you have a book like this in front of you, now you can see it. Now you can do your own research and go based off of the stuff that you've laid out, which I loved, because this is, like, it's right there. I mean, all you have to do is just, just read it, learn.
And the beauty of this is it has always been there, but it's been masked as something else. And that is often the best place to hide it, right in front of people. And every single thing that I do, whether that's taking the pyramids around the world, to say Quetzalcoatl, the serpent, the Mary Magdalene, the Mary and Joseph, the Isis, the Ra, it's all the same thing of different names, and it is all worshipping the same thing under a different guise. And when you realise this, you realise that the original core is the original core, the same small group of people manipulated the world through different guises, through different god names. Allah is Yahweh to somebody else, to Java to somebody else. It means the same thing in different ways, but it's all telling you the same story. When you look at the story of Isis and Horus, well, that is Mary and Jesus, and so on. So these stories and these things have been borrowed and stolen from other cultures to snowball into something completely different. And when you look at popes and like Pope Leo X, it has served as well, this myth of Christ. Everything has always been right in front of us, but people are not, because they are believing that they have found the truth, and they haven't found the truth. They've been that a bit has been sold to them as the truth. It goes many different depths, many different layers, and until people realise that, until people realise the true meanings of these things, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to be scared of this loving God, this Christ? No, because the word fear in Hebrew, no one understands. So what it's really telling you is not to fear, is to understand and to know. But that is the God within, that is the Christ within, which is the divine mind, which is the initiated soul. And when you understand the true meanings of these things, if I was to pass somebody now, and the 5 books of Moses make up the Torah, the Jewish Torah. Now, if I was to the Bible and say, read, I guarantee everybody would go from Genesis. So, in the case of Torah, from Genesis to Deuteronomy, they would read it from left to right. But the Hebrew, so what you should be doing is reading from Genesis the other way around.
Wow.
Because then you get a completely different interpretation. Now, when you look at the heart is your spiritual center. It's significant because when the mum says that is the pentagram, and the heart is at the center. But when we write in the Western world, we write from left to right. Now, when the Hebrews and the mystic write, they go from right to left, so they are bringing themselves towards the heart.
Oh, wow.
So we have things the wrong way around.
No, is that wonder if it's by design? If there's some
completely by design.
Yeah, to where it's one of those. It's like to separate from that. It's like do this, and this is the way we're taught to go. Because I don't know. It's like for me, I've always had a hard time writing linear like this. I've always had to turn my paper almost at a 45, and I have to write up. Because that feels, so in a way, it's like I'm not doing the traditional left to right. I have to do it a whole different direction.
But you're writing away from the heart.
Yeah,
I got in trouble. I used to write it like 90 degrees. My teacher made me turn it like you did it. I'd always write like that. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but 90 degrees is extremely important. 90 degrees, the 90 degree of separation comes into the Knights of Malta, Cross of Malta. At the Knights of Malta, it comes into why do UFOs shoot off at 90 degrees. 90 degrees is important because it relates to consciousness. When UFOs are shooting and zipping off at 90 degree angles, when you look at a geometric, if you wish to go from one reality to the next or from one dimension to the next, you do that at 90 angles. So the fourth dimension is 90. UFOs are zipping away at 90 degree angles is because they're shifting from dimension to dimension, reality to reality, doing that at 90 degrees. And we're looking at the resurrection ritual. The candidate is brought up at 90 degrees and so on and so on. So it's an important number, and we have, every house has a 90 in each corner because it's jumping grids from dimension into dimension.
And then before we run out of time, because it's hours already flown by, I want to show up here and make sure I've got this. This is the correct one for the Global Pyramid Conference, October 22nd through the 24th. Is that correct?
That is the correct one. Yeah, I'm doing two talks, but on live stream because of travel restrictions. I'm not able to get there personally, but that's the right one in there and going really, really into depth into what the pyramids really mean.
Yeah, and you can go to globalpyramidconference.com or pssmglobal.org for more information. And this is, I think this was in Gold Pyramid one. It says you can follow them for more information. But and then I'm going to take to this, and then we're going to go back to his. You go back to his site, and this is michael-feely.com, where once again he offers services from spiritual life coaching session, one-on-ones. You can have monthly subscription, webinars, workshops with him. Please go pick up this book, Alchemy of the Gods. He has 6 others, including several ebooks that on esoteric topics that you can pick up as well. But this is, and I did get that right, wasn't it? 7 books?
Yes, it is. But the two currently, there's 2 currently in writing. That'll be 9 when they come out.
Nice. So Alchemy of the Gods. Pick this one up so you can see. I mean, we only had an hour, so we were only able to touch on a few things. But I mean, the few things that he broke into, it's tenfold. I mean, when you see it, you break down. You start seeing the little things. I mean, everything from the Egyptian ankhs that matches. It's just like I said, it's a full in-depth thing. I mean, I try to take in about a chapter and a half, so every night as I was reading, and it's just, there's a lot of information in there. And so check out, like I said, here's the cover of the book right there, Alchemy of the Gods. You have the Cirrus Point, Stargate to the Gods, the Secret Christ. So go check those, Amazon.com, purchase it, check it out, leave them a review, because as with all authors, the reviews on there are extremely helpful, because a lot of people take recommendations off that seriously when they're deciding which books to check out. So, Michael, I appreciate you coming on the show, sir. It was a fantastic thing. I mean, I would love to down the road have a part 2 and actually get back with you, and especially when you have one of your other works out, and actually talk to you about that.
No, and any pleasure to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I said it was a pleasure, and I said we will definitely do this again. So have a great night. Tell your wife thank you for lending you to us for for the previous hour, and let's get back to the family there, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure they'll be asleep now, but I'll pass on in the morning for you.
All right, sounds good. Take care over there. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the invite.
All right, everybody. So So check us out on all the social medias, patreon.com. Haha, see, I'm messing up with, tricking Austin there. Yeah, so he's going to get back to it there. Yeah, he's going to do them all on patreon.com/3 Beards Podcast is a way you can adopt one of us beards. As you can see, Chris's beard needs an adoption, really bad. I mean, that looks like a homeless child right now. It needs beard oil bad. And that's only through, you got to adopt that thing. Austin's was it was looking like the Kraken, and so he had to trim that thing down. And so it's back, but mine, I have a teenager. It's turning nice and gray. If anybody, you can't see this if you're listening, but if you view it, you can see it. It's turning nice and gray. Some might call it distinguished, but I don't. I think it makes me cult. Yeah, redbubble.com, 3 Beards Podcast is where you get merchandise, so you can sport coasters, stickers, shirts. Man. Yeah, it's lots. I mean, as we get that, we'll get some. Yeah,
tank tops are comfortable, and the long sleeve shirt is so comfortable, man.
Yeah, that's. I also picked up a couple of shirts. So as I said, he really likes them. So check those out. And once again, everybody, please go to YouTube, subscribe. Comment. Doesn't matter if it's Facebook. Doesn't matter if it's YouTube. Throw some comments in there because the algorithms absolutely eat that up, and that means the world. So just comment. So everybody, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. We will see you on the next show. Good night.